Well, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call this August Public Works Board to meeting. Call it to order. Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Ms. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Temperley?
Here.
Mr. Picard?
Here.
Mr. Lair?
Here. That brings us to the June meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review those?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of June 12th.
Second.
Can we do an approval?
I'm going to run the roll.
Okay, thank you.
It's my first time taking it. Make sure I use the chart that's afforded me here.
Oh.
Okay, who was the second there?
As Vicky.
Me.
Okay, Vicki, thank you. Okay, so Ms. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Temperley,
Aye.
Mr. Picard,
Aye.
Mr. Lair.
Aye. So with that, that brings us to questions and public comment. With our lovely small group, that brings us to the discussion of yard waste and composting. I hear you have some information for us.
I believe we do. Betsy and Paul and Dustin have put some information together that they put in a memo form for you to look at and review. They've made some suggestions, so I'll let either Dustin or Betsy take over. Which one you want? Let Betsy. All right, we'll throw them first.
Okay, so we met a few weeks ago. I started to look at maybe what an option that the Public Works Board would like to move forward as a recommended next step. And as we started to talk through that, do we want to have, propose that we want to move forward for the committee to consider moving forward with a full composting facility or a drop-off facility? We kind of took a bigger step back and said, for either one of those, it would be good to have a better handle on the actual volumes that are being received. So let's maybe just try to come up with a plan where we can do that. So maybe a 1 or 2 year, or however many, short-term plan to just find a location where we could put some roll-off dumpsters, have that be more of a secure facility, so with the gates and fencing, potentially cameras, lighting is needed. We can man that, or we could not, but as of now, we're pricing it to man it. And just for, again, 1 or 2 years at least, better track our volumes so that if we do develop our own facility, we have a better idea what size that needs to be. What's our baseline? If we want to take it to another facility, we want to negotiate a price with them, we have some real data to say, here are our volumes. So that's what we've put together for these handouts for you today, are a couple of options for a couple of sites that were brought up. This by no means has to be the only options out there, but that was kind of the first two that came to mind. So maybe, Steve, if you wouldn't mind putting in that figure 1 of 2, which is the existing drop-off location.
Is this in our packet?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, so it says figure 1 of
Yeah.
2 at the bottom. So that's the existing drop-off location. What we've shown is like some key improvements there. So the fencing, a couple of gates, the rectangular boxes on either side are representing the roll-off dumpsters. And then we've also assumed that we would need to be creating a gravel subbase there to put those dumpsters on and to allow the truck to come in and pick up and unload those dumpsters.
How do you get this stuff inside the dumpster?
So people would have to lift and,
Well, that will certainly change the amount of stuff that gets,
right, right. So, there are facilities, there are many facilities for smaller communities where they have this type of an operation. And some of those will have like a built-up ramp so people can drive up on a ramp and more just drop into the dumpsters. I mean, that could be something, if we could find the right location where we could do something like that, there'd be enough room to, construct a ramp, we could look at something like that. For these couple of sites, it didn't seem like we had quite the room to do it, but we wanted to get at least an initial reaction from you as to whether or not you really wanted to pursue this as an option, a short-term option, before we totally dug into all the details. But again, so yeah, you're right, Vicki, you would have to be dumping over it. We'd probably have some extra trash cans there for plastic bags. So you'd say, if you brought your leaves in plastic bags, dump them into the dumpster and place your plastic bag in this trash can, so we're not contaminating that yard waste.
so part of this would also be improved signage so that people know to do that?
I think that's absolutely a great idea, yes. And the second location that was brought up was on CP Avenue across from the Public Works, the Street Department office. So there's an old pull yard storage area there with one, so it's that south end of that substation. Thank you. So there is an existing access road into that south end. That whole back section is already fenced off, separate from the rest of that substation. There's a gate at that south entrance there. We'd probably need one more gate because you can tell that that access road in is pretty narrow, so you wouldn't be able to get in and out traffic going at the same time on that access road. Paul and I had talked, and he mentioned that gravel road just south of there between the substation and that building, the city has been able to use kind of as needed and as wanted. So again, there may be some more of those type of details, negotiations we would need to work out to confirm that we could continue to use that or that the public could. And again, these are by no means the only two locations we could potentially look at. It was just two that came up in conversation. So then beyond those figures, we provided a cost summary. So that has just, it's not a comprehensive cost, but it's looking at some of the key site improvements that we'd be looking at for those two different facilities. So the first there is that existing Stony Road location. With that one, we need, as I mentioned, some gravel sub-base place in addition to the fencing and gates and such. So that's a little bit higher cost overall for the initial capital improvements. That next location on CP Avenue that has a good sub-base, a solid sub-base to work off of already, so that would just need an extra gate and some lights. So we're, maybe somewhere around 20,000 for the CP Avenue site and more like 40,000 for the existing site. And then if you go below that, then we start to look at the annual operations for that. So we've made some additional calls. We talked to John's Disposal to get an idea of what they would charge for a rental for those dumpsters and how much they would charge for hauling. And then we looked at, we'd mentioned before, we've talked to Purple Cow Organics, who's been able to give us some pricing. So we talked to them about what that would cost if we just brought items in dumpsters ourselves, self-hauled. You would third-party it out on your end, but and then looking at a couple of different options in terms of manning that facility. So you'll see there's an option with 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. Again, these aren't the only two options. They're just two that we put out there. And then another option for 4 hours one day, so maybe a weeknight, and then an 8-hour day, like say on the weekend. So there's a couple of different staffing options there. And then at the bottom, then, for instance, for option one, hauling to a third-party permitted facilities such as Purple Cow, that annual cost is, somewhere close to $70,000. What I'll note about this is based on the 5 dumpsters that we've assumed and a weekly pickup of those 5 dumpsters, and they're 30 cubic yard dumpsters. With those assumptions, that puts us at about 4,600 cubic yards. So the city was initially, from some data they had, thinking maybe they were in the 12,000 cubic yard a year range. But as we previously talked about at the last meeting too, cities more like Middleton, who are probably at least 3 times the population, are more in the 12,000 cubic yard range. So this will be a really good exercise for us to really figure out where we're at. But potentially, if you are closer to that higher end, maybe we need to pick up maybe twice a week. That would put us closer to the 9,000 cubic yard range. So that we'd have to see how it goes. But again, you'd have about a secure facility, so you may have less dumping, less illegal materials that you're having to deal with. So that volume could go down right away from that.
If people bring branches, do those go in the dumpster?
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah,
very,
up to a certain size, and then you might just have,
it won't be very, it's mostly going to be air then, correct?
right, the density in that
It's gonna be
dumpster
very-
isn't going to be great.
Yeah.
So your hauling costs for the volume you're hauling is not going to be a great ratio, but for stuff that's just larger, you might, if we can find room too, have just a pile on the ground. So, and we did further dig into talking with some other municipalities. We had mentioned before that we had talked to, for instance, Watertown, and they had said some, from just real kind of high-level conversations, they might be interested in teaming together. We circled back with them again on that. The gentleman I spoke to before has left. He's retired. So we talked to the new person. And they're somewhat interested, potentially. They're pretty full right now, but they have mentioned that they had someone call them and they said they wanted all their material. So maybe they'll have room in the short term, but we can't say for sure. But they're the one that had given us a little bit of an opening yet. We also contacted Waterloo and Jefferson, who have permitted facilities. The Jefferson, they indicated maybe, kind of a maybe, a pretty cold maybe. They would need to evaluate their remaining capacity to figure out if they could take on yours. And again, I think that's part of the issue we're having is we don't have a good handle on the volumes to say to a community that we're going to approach, here's how much we expect. So that might be where a third-party permitted facility might be a better option for an initial stage, where they have more available capacity.
Have you talked to Johnson Creek?
We have not talked to Johnson Creek.
Do you know if they're permitted or not? Is that why you maybe didn't talk to them?
I believe they are. Let's see. Yes, Johnson Creek does have a permitted facility.
Well, they're relatively close.
Yep.
So,
They're relatively small.
well, if we make everybody put in dumpsters, we won't have that much volume either.
Well, the volume would get cut down too once you gate it and staff it too.
know.
Yeah.
Right.
The
That's not
volume we
necessarily a
have
bad
is going to
thing.
be related to the site that we allow people to drop off.
Yeah.
If we go with this, because I think it's going to provide quite a few limitations for what people can drop off, will we still have the ability to have stuff picked up at the curb if we pay for it, or the spring and fall free one?
We had still planned on doing the spring and fall free one and the pickup if you pay for it. I anticipate that you're gonna get a lot more yard waste than you think you are. And remember, we've already talked to the town of Lake Mills and have had interest from other governmental organizations about dropping off here. So it's not like we're gonna be I don't think we're gonna be a small organization or a small dump site. We're gonna have to be permitted. Both of those sites are close to the creek. So I think you're gonna have to end up doing some control. They're talking about putting it in dumpsters and using that as the control. But I anticipate you're gonna see a ton of it dumped on the ground. And I'm willing to put up large flashing signs that say, don't dump on the ground. I'm willing to bet that 50% of it is dumped on the ground.
Even if it's manned?
If it's manned, no. But that substantially changes our costs.
Yeah.
Because manning a site is really the most expensive thing you can do.
If we were to go down this path, would you start with it manned or unmanned?
That's your decision, but if I were doing it, I would look at a different site where we actually design it initially, saying that this is gonna have the capacity that we're probably gonna need in the long run. Lay out the hard pad, put in the stormwater control, fence it, put in the fencing control with a key of some sort a card that you come up here and buy, and then start from there. I would say that, and camera it, but I wouldn't man it right away. And I'd wait to see what we get. And if you do that, then you can dump it on the ground in the concrete bins that we're already using.
So would you say that that's our option 3?
I would say that if I were doing it, that's the way I'd do it. Now, if you want to do an option, is listed as an option 3, I would, but at least that gets you in the initial phase of the first phase of what could develop into a bigger project. But at least you know, you're not investing $20,000-$40,000 in a site you know you're gonna move off of.
Right.
And,
But you're-
you know,
but
if
you're
you're gonna
investing
get
a lot of
permitted,
other
you're gonna have to do a couple other things other than just,
If you invest in Stony Road, does that investment go anywhere? There's really nothing for that to be used for in the future, right?
actually, the business across the street at one time was talking about buying it for a parking lot.
So the improvement doesn't completely for naught, but it's basically for naught?
Yeah, I would say, well,
That's
the main thing you're putting in there is the fencing, because right now it's already all rocked and ready to go for the asphalt, but the fencing and the regrading, and if you use that site and they're not dumping in the bins, or the bins are leaky, that runs right straight to the creek. So,
And
I
if we
mean,
improve
are we gonna be permitted?
And what if we improve CP Avenue? Is that better for us as a whole? I mean, the dollar amount's lower, excuse me, the dollar amount's lower, but can we use that in the future if we decide not to go with that area?
The one on CP Avenue, is really a storage location for the Public Works building, so you're forcing them to find another spot to store all their stormwater and piping and manholes and castings and, so it's, we're really looking at a very short-term interim solution, and it makes us have to figure out, we're gonna have to rent another spot to store our stuff.
There's some space on Stony Road.
We'd have to fence it.
I know, but you wouldn't have to rent it.
No,
You already own it.
but, you'd have to fence it.
Yeah, yeah,
So you might be able to rent in the short term for less than you'd.
yeah.
In short term, you're still talking the 1 to 2 years it would take to do the study, right?
To
Yeah.
evaluate it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then if we spend the money to improve the fenced-in area on CP Avenue, it's a marginal improvement for a outside storage space. Anyways, right?
Right.
And if it's working well, I mean, there's nothing to say it can't be your long-term solution if you just find it's working fine. But
Yeah.
It's still open. It's not manned. So
Well,
it's still gonna be
fenced.
swamped.
it could be,
So
I guess that would be
ransom.
the choice. It could be manned. Certainly that's an option. It's whether or not you want to do that.
It used to be manned. I was surprised. Wayne told me it used to be manned.
Yeah, that one out there was manned for a long time, and the one here was manned. I wouldn't say it was real effective. But it was manned.
Okay. Does anyone know why that was abandoned or?
Yeah, I did it,
Oh, you did it?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was manned, but it wasn't fenced, right?
Wasn't fenced, so.
Oh, well,
While it was
Yeah.
manned the one that was on this site was fenced.
yeah. How'd that work? I mean, was that?
that was
No, it
also
still
for-
wasn't.
that was-
No cameras?
That was also for recycling.
Uh-huh.
It was recycling and yard waste.
Yeah.
It wasn't particularly large site, if I recall.
No, and they dumped, just like they do now, right out to the edge of the street once the gate closed.
They dumped outside the gate?
Yep.
How come other communities don't have this problem?
Yeah.
I've been involved in several communities, and every one of them's had this problem.
Not to this level.
You know,
I've gotten feedback from some of the communities that if you have it in a place where it's visible enough where people could see if someone is dumping, people like to tell on each other.
Yeah.
And so if you have it in a more public place where people might see someone illegally dumping someone, maybe that wouldn't be as bad, in
Well-
addition to the fencing and security.
Yeah, I mean, cameras can, you know.
Right.
You know, they're not very expensive anymore. All sorts of people have trail cams that are motion activated, that can see a whole lot of stuff, and they hardly cost anything.
Right.
So
The thing
if you
with
want to be able,
cameras-
and once people find out that there's cameras, or there's, you know, the chance of getting caught with illegal dumping, and there's a fine or something, I think that, you know, that's when they react and stop doing it.
trail cams, in my opinion, might be a little bit better initially, because if you're going with cameras, you gotta sit someone down and watch those cameras.
Yeah,
And, or watch the film or what,
Right.
whatever you have, and that takes a lot of time, because remember, you got a lot of hours of people
right.
having access to that.
Well, you want something that's motion sensitive, so you don't have to manually review hours and hours where nothing's happening. I mean, computers are smart enough to be able to sense motion and a whole lot of other things in video now.
And I think that's one of the keys that happens nowadays that didn't, because when I was at Whitefish Bay, we had the same problem. We
Yeah.
had the same problem in
Yeah.
Mahomet, and every city that I had worked with at that time, they had the same problem. You know, people were dumping. So you got to have some way to control the access. Nobody, I mean, people rat each other out, but nobody wants it next to their house. So it's not likely that we're going to put it in an area where a lot of people are sitting watching it.
Is the CP Avenue too close to residential then?
That portion of CP Avenue, no.
Okay.
I still don't like it because anywhere else you locate the public works stuff, they're traveling a longer distance now. This is across the street. They have regular opportunity to view it, those types of things. I think there are other locations where you could put this just, and then you have a longer term option. You're not throwing any dollars away, and
So,
we're gonna have yard waste no matter what. And if we build that initial site,
this meters the yard waste that people bring to the site. It doesn't meter the yard waste that the city brings to the site. So,
well,
is
we
that somehow able to be metered?
well, in this situation, not likely, because, you know, we dump from a large truck. All of it, what we pick up with our dump in the flatbeds or what we pick up with the leaf vac, you're not gonna dump those into a dumpster.
Right.
And that's a lot of material. We would have to haul directly to the dump site, but the problem has been is that it's not open all the time. So we don't have access to it the whole time we're doing leaf pickup and brush pickup. And so yes, we would have to have another site to drop off our home. And again, that's why I'm saying having a larger site that we develop and fence, and
So
we don't have to man it. I don't think we have to man it. I think you do need cameras on it.
And a fence,
And a fence.
but yeah.
And
but
gates.
Car
Gates.
keys, yeah. I mean, I belong to, several, the raffle club, they got car keys to use the trap houses. They keep track of how much you use and, when you use it.
We've got fobs for every building that we own now. And it does the same thing. You can get reports on.
So if we can't meter all of the yard waste, let's call it, of the city, then does it make sense to put in some of it in dumpsters?
Dramatic pause.
I don't like the dumpster idea, first of all, because you're gonna have a lot of people who don't wanna do it that way. And you're gonna get a lot of complaints. And the metering becomes, I mean, if people don't, it can vary substantially from dumpster to dumpster depending on how you put it in there and what gets put in there.
Branches versus
I mean-
firewood.
Right now, our guys push it into a big pile, and it gets compacted down pretty tight. If they kept better track of the loads that they hauled and the cubic yards that they were hauling that way, I would think you would get as good a data as not. The issue right now is we're cramming that into such a tight time period because we got so much other things to do that recording the data is at the
Yeah.
bottom of their list.
And also, there's no segregation between who's bringing what to the site. There's no enforcement, there's no watching eye or anything like that.
Yeah,
You can't distinguish what's township stuff versus what's city stuff.
Yeah, but right now, you're just basically looking at how much material you're hauling out. And if we got better control of it, we would know that, or have a good idea of what that was. And then you could kind of monitor it based on what you're hauling out. Because you're gonna have to do the same thing with the stuff that we bring in, right? So it's just, getting someone in enough to be able to record the data. But we've got to do something anyways. I'm like, we need to get that initial site set up, and then how we construct that, I think but using the 2 sites that are proposed, I don't think is the greatest idea. I think there are other sites that are available that would work better, and we can fence, and then we can kind of ramp the program up from there. We can get a better idea of what we're bringing in. We can control better who has access to it, and,
If we go for a bigger site, and if Stony Road is a baseline improvement, relatively small compared to what it sounds like I'm hearing, but if that's 42 grand, do we have enough capital to actually do a different site and improve it so that we can at least run the little tests that we're trying to figure out so we can gather the data, or to improve it for the long term?
I think building a site, for $80,000 should be, you're gonna have to buy it,
Yeah.
maybe.
So my concern here is, do we build or buy a site, or let's create a larger site, large enough for composting, and then we decide that hauling it to Purple Cow or someplace else is more cost effective, then we've over-purchased a site versus,
The one thing about land is you can always resell.
yeah,
And so I don't see that as a problem. I don't think we should overbuild the actual starting site.
right.
The amount of gravel and the fencing should be tighter.
Yeah,
But buying the land, I think you buy the land and you're prepared to go larger.
Where would you go as an alternate site then? It sounds like you have a couple in mind, that's why I say it that way.
It was supposed to be in the bus tour, that was part of the agenda for the bus tour, but I don't remember you pointing out any sites.
Probably before a purchase offer is on the table, we probably don't want to talk those
Oh.
specifically.
All right.
Thank you.
That explains it.
Yeah, there are some sites that are options.
Okay.
And so then, without going through more of those kind of questions that I'm gonna wanna ask, back to that $80,000 range, do we actually have that kind of money to spend on something like this?
It's a capital improvement, so we borrow the money and we do it. Do we have the capacity? Well, depends. If the council picks to do 17 projects that are over the $20 million mark, we're probably not gonna have the money. But, getting an idea of what we want to do, what we think is the best option, and putting it out there at least gives them an option to start heading towards.
But we can't keep doing what we're doing now.
I don't think in the long run, we're going to be able to continue to do what we're doing
I
now.
think this should have been addressed years ago. I mean, it's always been a mess.
how long would it take to develop this? new
A
site?
year, a summer. I think you could have everything up and ready to go. The hard part would be buying the land.
So it takes,
Because putting down you just bulldoze the dirt out, lay the gravel down and fence around it. The stormwater detention basin, some engineer would have to figure out how to do that. I don't know if there's any here that could do that. But,
Yeah, and if you're doing for the short term, this would be more like a transfer facility than a storage or a compost facility. So the permitting requirements are different for that. So it looks like you probably wouldn't need a permit for it because it's a transfer facility. And depending on the amount of impervious surface that we would add and the amount of land we're going to disturb, we may not need an erosion control and stormwater management permit. So, a couple of those things could, not have to be major considerations with this short-term kind of option.
we have some, sensitive waters and waters we want to take care of. So like the existing site, I'm guaranteeing you there's a lot moving into that creek. And both those sites are within a couple hundred feet or less of the creek. So if you do anything along ditch 35, or somewhere along the lake, you're gonna wanna take care of your stormwater. And I think our erosion control plan is probably a little bit more detailed than the state. So, those are things we'd have to look at, but I would think the initial, you'd want it to start laying it out so that everything drained to a pond and then out. And then you could control the runoff. I would, because smelling and seeing what's running off that site on a regular occasion is not.
Well, it depends how quickly you clear it off, too.
Yeah, but, you know, like now, we're controlled on that by when they open up the site. So if you see that pile getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it's either because we're so busy we don't have time, or the site's locked, or both. So saying that, you know, you could clean it out more often is not necessarily the answer. And the more people come to, you know, if you have someone that's picking it up, the more they pick it up, the more you're gonna pay. Especially if they're not full.
Right.
Well, I think option 3 makes the most sense.
Something more permanent for just yard waste only that's gated and
They could then
Controlled.
grow into what the long-term plan is.
if you decide to have our own compost
Yeah.
facility. Because we don't know how much of that is city waste.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting old, but the idea of pulling up, it's in the trunk of my car. Sometimes it's in containers, sometimes it's just in the trunk of the car. And then get it out of there, grab it in my arms, take it over to a dumpster and try to dump it into a dumpster. I don't picture myself doing that very often, so I would probably call the city and say, I got something on the tree line, come pick it up, I'll pay for it. Or maybe make a pile and wait until fall to get rid of
Yeah.
it. I don't picture that I would be using it, and I suspect there's probably other homeowners that would view it the same way. So your data would become skewed because normal users are going to figure out some other way, at least as long as they're stuck with having to use dumpsters.
I see a problem there too, because we do not charge a fee that covers our costs. And so if we are now running around picking up little piles of brush all over the city every week,
I was gonna bring that up. You weren't here at the meeting. I mentioned something like the cemetery fees. Totally outsource the pickup outside or spring and fall. And whatever fee the contractor charges, that's the fee we charge homeowners. I like to see that completely off the tax rolls because we do offer free spring and fall cleanup. And like you said, 2 weeks after our free cleanups, we get these little piles here and there. And it's the street department. I'd rather see them tend to our streets, which are $1 million assets, rather than going around picking up branches. So,
I think that the pay to pick up is only once a month. So even if they leave it laying on the tree line,
Yeah.
it's not going to get picked up until that monthly pickup.
if you start having a lot of pickup though,
Yeah,
you may, even if that became once a week, yeah, it would take that whole week, 1 week every month to pick up all the brush.
I don't think we're going to do the dumpsters, so I think it's a moot point.
yeah.
What's it cost for a pickup?
$35. What does it charge? What do we
Yeah.
charge is $35. When you figure a truck and it,
Oh, yeah, I'm just curious
Yeah.
as a person.
And
that would pay
probably
for it,
two
if
people.
$35 would be enough to make me drive over there or not. That's what I was trying to feel out. If it was $5, I'd tell you to pick it up every day. 35 at least makes me think a little more.
I had
But
some
it
big
doesn't-
branches. I thought it was cheap, so I paid to have it done. So,
It's true too.
You can charge by the pound too, and that way it's, the
yeah.
big loads are, more, not
Yeah, but
taking advantage of the system.
Yeah.
But then you get the overhead of keeping track of it somehow.
Yeah.
But I could have waited till fall. I just thought, well, $35, I'll pay that. So,
I guess it depends on the size.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
To your point, it still doesn't cover the cost of actually doing the labor, but
it doesn't, and you would want it to, because if you're pulling people, like Todd said, off the streets,
yeah.
like we mentioned, we're already having problems getting everything we want to get done this year done. And that's been consistently a problem for the last couple of years. And then you add on a lot more brush pickup every week, every month.
or we could contract it done.
Yeah,
can we put that in the next
Yeah, but then we're
agenda?
paying that again anyways. Because they're not gonna do it for $35
Right, but we just charge the homeowners for whatever the contractor's gonna charge, right? Like we do with the cemetery fees. Every year we review the contract and whether fees they charge, we just adjust the fee schedule.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that. But I would believe that the public might.
Well,
They already complained about $35. They want to know why we don't do like we used to, which is we drove every street in the city once every week
I
and picked
thought,
up brush.
when we went to charging people, I thought initially it was $15 unless you didn't make an appointment, then it was $30.
Yeah, and I think that's right.
So it must have jumped up to 35
No, I
at some
think
point.
you're right. It's still that.
it's still
Okay.
30, yeah.
Okay, so you're liking the idea of looking for a bigger property that could have some potential for future either composting facility or whatever we end up doing in the end. But then you don't want that to have the dumpsters, even if it had like a ramp area, you want it like people to dump on the ground, where then it needs to be picked up and put into,
Well, if it's gated and if we're gonna go to card keys, it wouldn't matter. They can put it in the ground there, right?
So
If you
then-
don't have a dumpster, the most efficient way to get it into a truck is to pick it up off the ground with a front end loader.
yeah,
So,
so then,
and
okay.
that's what we're doing now, more or
Yeah.
less, and that's what, it's easy for people to dump onto the ground.
I would like to have the type of bins that we have now too.
Yeah,
Right.
Because you separate them, you separate the type of material.
theoretically.
Give or take.
Theoretically, and you also have, you want to have a place where that wheel loader pushes up against.
Oh, yeah.
Can we reuse the existing?
I would think we could use those. They're just concrete barriers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like called.
Yeah.
Big concrete blocks.
Yeah, they're the ones that they use for road construction. They just stack them, right? Use them for barriers.
The Jersey barriers.
Anyways, I think that would work. I think that would work, because then, if you don't have those, you're gonna be hitting the fences all the time, and those
Yeah.
fences are gonna go. It's gonna be bad enough as it is, but at least this way you have some control over it. And a good, hard gravel pack allows you to control which way the drainage runs off. And allows vehicles to get in and out relatively easy.
The key thing for all of this, though, is that we still have some way to track the data. So as long as going without dumpsters, going somewhere else, as long as there's a way, as long as we keep that part in mind, so that we actually know what we're doing.
Yeah, we're gonna have to put something in that they haul in the truck that they can mark.
I mean, otherwise, we're just making another site, and as much as I like that, it's not the intent of what we're trying to do.
Maybe we have a thing that when they leave, they
Yeah.
pull a ticket. Like they do when they leave the gravel pit.
You're saying the hauler?
Yeah, the guy that drives the
Staff,
truck.
Basically.
staff that's hauling it from
Yeah.
that site to the current site.
That could work then. Because you have control over the people.
That makes the assumption that we still have that site,
The current site.
the current site,
Which site?
the dump, the Conservation Club.
Well, yeah,
And at
Right,
some
but-
point, we may have to look at dumpsters if that site is no longer available.
Like for third
well,
party.
well, if we went with Watertown or Jefferson, we could probably just haul right there ourselves too. If we go with another organization, they don't necessarily have to haul in dumpsters, or that they bring the dumpster and we load it right there.
And-
One, never take it off the truck.
Yeah.
It'd be more efficient than
Yeah.
not compacted dumpsters. You send what you have.
Yeah, once you load it with because our wheel loader, you press it up against that concrete barrier and then you put the clamshell on it. It's as compacted as you're gonna get the material.
I think it was mentioned several times before, but I think enforcement or key fobs or some way to track the material that's coming in is very, very important. I think at this point,
Yes.
Well, key fobs that keep the data,
Yeah.
that's one, and cameras. You're gonna have to have a camera system, whether it's like a hunting camera or one that shuts off and turns off based on motion. I think those are important, because you gotta have some method for enforcement, because if you're gonna, particularly around the outside edges, if they can't get in, they're gonna dump on the outside edge. And you have to be able to control that, and then maybe if the information gets out, that'll stop, or at least slow down significantly.
and a willingness to enforce that.
Yeah.
Right.
If we did key fobs for this first part, would it be free to get a key fob?
So I would say not using key fobs, because key fobs are kind of expensive on a per user
card.
basis. You want to, you know, you don't want to have a high unit cost for every homeowner.
Yeah,
So something either like a combination code for each user or a magnetic stripe for each user. But the key
I would
fobs
use a
are
card.
expensive, relatively speaking.
I would use a card.
Would they like purchase the number of visits then? And then each time they swipe it, it.
However we
decrements?
want to do it.
But we're just trying to get
Yeah.
data at this point, right? So just, let's cord on it off and see what we get.
We can charge $20 or $100 for a key card, or we can say, just come and pick them up.
All right.
It'd be nice to see what we actually have, and if we can get people to actually follow rules.
People will follow rules if the alternative is more painful.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of rules in the world that people do follow.
Yeah.
My experience is that's not necessarily true. People will follow the rules if they think they're the right thing to do.
Well, let's take seatbelts as an example.
I don't know.
You know, 20 years ago, that was a rule that wasn't followed very well. But if your car beeps every time you don't put it on,
Well,
they
That's a little bit
they
different.
find that alternative to be more annoying than actually putting it on.
that's true, but that's right there. That's not like having a police officer
Yeah.
or a building inspector come in and cite you, or a fire department official come in and cite you over and over and over again.
You could post the video on Facebook.
It would actually be kind of funny if you just did a live feed of it. the
Live
entire
feed
time.
right on Facebook. I'm sure someone will be watching.
That has been public shaming. Is that what you're talking about?
What's that?
It's outsourcing.
Yeah, public shaming, yeah.
Yeah, that has its legal limitations. I wouldn't want to be the one trying to defend that. Dan, how you doing?
Well, it depends on the circumstances. It is used still. I mean, judges do it all the time now. We're not judges.
All right.
So if the facility is manned, you'd still want like a card to get in versus maybe just like paper permit slip that you
I think we're
just-
steering away from
We're staying away from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because like,
so no manning,
Yeah.
just the card, okay.
If we determine that the card isn't working, or there's some other reason why we'd want to go to a man, then we'll reevaluate it. But I think the card is the best option initially.
Okay.
And people here, they like to have the flexibility. They don't want it manned, and I got that one day, and
mhm. That's why I like the card idea.
Well, and the information that you derive from each swipe,
Mhm.
that could be pretty valuable.
Yeah.
On the enforcement end, on the capacity end, it's valuable information.
Do we want to touch on the survey, Dustin?
Yeah.
he has the hot dog.
So the last item we have is just updating the survey that we brought to you a while back to just gain a little bit of feedback from the public on thoughts and expectations, and to kind of set the stage that change is happening. Something's going to have to change. So this survey would be made available through a link through the city's website, easily compiled and tracked on numbers and summaries. We can certainly make hard copies available, here at City Hall or whatnot, in case people want to participate but don't really have access or wherewithal to access it online. But most people will access it online, I think you're going to find. The questions, you'd asked for kind of a little bit of an intro on this, and setting the stage that we are going to be making a change. We want to make that clear, and we do kind of reiterate it with some of the questions throughout. We ask basic things about where they're coming from, so we have kind of a list of the most immediate jurisdictions around you, and then always the other. Maybe someone's going to tell us they're, coming from Johnson Creek or something, to use your unmanned, less than secure facility now.
I'm sure they'll be filling out a survey too.
Oh, we can always hope for some honesty. We just want information. Helps you make decisions. So we ask them how they're disposing of things. Do they use this site? How often do they use a drop-off site? So the questions, you've cleaned up some of the language, softened it in some places per your input. They still do generally have the some open-endedness, because we just want to hear from people. And there are some things that we're asking about that you don't accept now, but it's always nice to hear if that's the direction people want you to go in and help, for the long term. I don't know if there's any specific questions you had about it. It is short, so it shouldn't take someone more than a couple minutes really to respond to it. It will be able to help you distill kind of by, if someone's honest about where they're coming from, you can at least distill some of the answers down by town of Lakeville Mills versus Ashland versus your own city residents. We ask if they're contractors or dropping off contractor material, so just get an idea of what it is you're facing out there. Does it hit on the things that you're kind of expecting to hear from people? I know it's going to help the staff, understand and what you're dealing with, and it will kind of open the eyes, I think, to the public that something's happening. We'd like to make it go live as soon as practical, and there doesn't necessarily have to be an end date on it. It can run. I mean, it doesn't. There's no real cost to having it up and letting it go. So you can. I think it's one of those things where some people may hear about it and you get some initial responses, but I think over time, as more and more people hear that there's a survey available, and that the public becomes more aware that something's going to change, they're really going to want to weigh in on it. So I wouldn't say we're only going to have the survey open for a finite amount of time. I think it's something that's just good to monitor. I don't know if there's any questions.
Reading through it, it seemed to hit everything that we were talking about last time. The only comment I was going to say is on number 9.
Mm-hmm.
It says other please specify. Just give me a box to say.
Oh yeah, there should be an open-ended box. Yep.
Okay.
We'll take care of that.
So how soon we have this available online then?
We'll talk with the city on how they get it, update their material. I think do you work with, does Heather take care of all of this? Or? So we could probably have it up, well before the end of the week, if not tomorrow.
Oh, really? That
Oh, I
quick?
didn't get that.
Yeah, the survey's done digitally. It's just,
Maybe we could even have a sign at the yard waste site, access the survey at www.ci blah, blah, blah. Maybe somebody will see that and actually do it.
if you're sending any utility bills or something out, it's always nice to put a little blurb at the bottom of those, just to make people aware of it. Obviously, there's friends groups in the community making them aware of it, and then, making it prominent on the city's webpage.
Or Facebook, people look at the Facebook page.
Different
Yeah.
departments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Facebook would get a lot of word out.
But we'll coordinate with the city staff and kind of just making
Yeah.
sure that people know. And
It'll
again,
get shared.
since we don't need it,
Yeah.
We have an unofficial gossip Facebook that people will see it, so.
especially if it becomes controversial.
Yeah, yeah.
So is this enough of a direction at this point?
Yes.
For me, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So
Thanks.
I wanted to discuss if there's anything we can do with the current site in terms of better signage or cameras to help improve the use, the proper use of it. You know, right now, we don't have signage that says no contractors. So if that's a policy, you know,
To be-
it's,
Yeah,
it's really hard to.
Discuss that, but at the time we did the switch from pick up every week to twice a year, I don't know if Todd remembers this, but
Yeah, I was the one.
one of the conversations is that, well, I don't have a truck, you know, I'm an elderly lady and I don't have a truck, and if you guys don't pick it up, how am I gonna get my brush to the, and kind of the comment was, well, have your contractor bring it in. And that was a mistake. But at this point in time, you go out there and you survey them and they're gonna say, well, I'm dropping off for someone from the city. And that's an issue. So if we say no contractors, that wouldn't actually be true. What we should say is no contractors hauling material from outside the city, but the second you catch them, it's going to be from in the city. So now we have to do a full-blown investigation to prove that they actually were hauling it from the city, and it got to be more work than it was worth at the time. So I'm willing to put up signs. I definitely think we should put up a trail camera.
So if we have a secure site, how is it going to work? You know, do contractors that do stuff for the city, can they, you know, for city residents, they can come in? How, you have the same issue then, even if we have a secure site, don't we?
I agree with Dustin. I think we charge contractors a different price. I think we're gonna have that issue.
Yeah.
And either we don't issue it to contractors, they have to use the resident's card. And then we see how often that one card is used, because if they're using it 6 times a week and and we look at the camera and see that they're dropping off
Large amounts.
large truckloads of garbage, I think you can, or yard waste, I think that there's some correlation between a small yard with, you know, a
Yeah,
couple
yeah,
trees.
I
And
know.
I think that there are ways to evaluate it. At this point in time, it's very difficult. I think a camera would be valuable.
Yes.
Just because, you know, the pictures that you've been taking, they tell a large story. And,
Yeah, I'm sure at least half is contractors from wherever and non-city residents. I wouldn't be surprised if it's half.
I would say at least half. I drive by there on a regular basis, and I know how much the guys haul. And I'm like, we must have hauled every single tree in the city out 5 times
What?
in the time that I've been here.
I saw a guy dumping wood chips.
Something which,
Not, you know, the wood chip pile is there for city residents to get wood chips. Not for city residents to dump wood chips.
It's, I mean, you see everything, and you always wonder what it is, what's going on. But from my standpoint, it's less about what's getting dumped as it is how much.
Yeah.
Because again, there can't possibly be that many trees in the city of Lake Mills. I can't believe it. If as much brush has gone into that yardway center in the 18 years I've been here, has to take every tree out of the city.
So what, is there a city contractor policy right now? And, you know, there's 3 or 4 ways to divide the line. One way would be to say, if the person is doing, I mean,
what about the size of the vehicle? I mean.
yeah, You know,
A
if-
normal person wouldn't need more than a
So,
pickup.
so you can dump concrete and asphalt there. So if I get my asphalt driveway replaced with concrete, is a contractor allowed to dump it, the asphalt there?
They have.
I didn't say if they had or not. I asked if they are permitted to. Obviously, the big contractors don't.
No,
But-
the big
but some-
contractors have use
Some
for asphalt.
smaller
It's
contractors
more
have.
likely we get concrete.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
but-
so what is the policy? And if, you know, whatever we decide to do, long-term or short-term, we should have it on the website and we should have some signage indicating it because,
Do we even have a written policy ordinance?
It says you can't use it for contractors' use.
Okay.
that's a written,
And it limits materials that can be dumped, yes.
that's an
Okay.
ordinance or?
Yes.
I think when you go to a new system that's secured, you're going to want to evaluate what you're accepting and how it's being funded. Whether you're going to give, if you go to a card system and you give a card to a resident because they came in and applied for it, or are they buying a card, or are they buying a card that has, think of it as a punch card. You know, you buy a card and it's worth 5 trips, right? And you can do the same thing with a contractor. You can price them differently. But I think the first thing is to get to something that's secure and then determine what's the best way.
Our current yard waste site is out of control, and getting a new site in a year takes a year. And that's why I'm asking the question about what can we do with the
Well, it's been
current
out of control
site?
for
Is there
years.
enough lighting there now, and is there enough cameras? There's one camera now, right?
There's no camera.
Oh, it says there's a camera.
Yeah, but
Okay.
there's something that looks like a camera, but it's really just a
So,
box.
so the question is there enough lighting there now? And then,
That's why I don't want to invest, first of all,
Yeah.
the type of camera that you need to be able to do this correctly takes a lot of power. And so to set it up and wire it and have it all, and then protect it, because that's going to be a pretty substantial investment that somebody's going to want to shoot out. I don't want to put up there, but if you strapped on a trail camera now, you would probably get the vast majority of what you're looking for. And they generate enough light themselves that,
there are enough economical camera options for you
Yes.
that you can look at. So, but I think you have a lighting issue out there, and you certainly have an enforcement issue. Right? There's no eyes in the street over there. To Betsy's point earlier, is there's no deterrent for anybody.
Yes, correct.
So you may want to start enhancing the lighting and then look at other security camera options.
So at this point, would the compromise be to do,
What does lighting do if there's nobody around there? There's no residents
Well,
around, there's no houses around
It's
there.
pretty dim over there, and, you know, people are less visible.
And, you know, it can be Sunday afternoon and a contractor comes in there and dumps stuff.
Yeah.
It's not
we haven't
just
had it
like-
at night. It hasn't been a nighttime issue.
Yeah.
They come in after 5
Yeah,
and on weekends.
yeah.
so would the compromise be to, if you're going to do an investment that we can transfer over to the new facility that we'd be going over to? Same with science, same with whatever else we were going to be going?
The signage would be the same, so, but the signage isn't real expensive.
Right.
But my experience has been most people don't read the signs. I think the camera is the best option. I just worried that we put in the camera that we could buy now and transfer over to the other site's gonna be, we're gonna want a nice camera
Yeah.
that's relatively expensive.
But a trail
And-
camera is expensive.
Betsy and I can.
Without having some way to protect it, I'm worried that it'll be damaged. And I'd rather just, in the interim, make a cheap investment like a trail camera.
Right.
We have
We can do that.
we have an engineer that just does security systems, so we can certainly at least look at what some of the options are. We can certainly talk with Brandon and Strand to see if they have some thoughts as well. So.
I know that, you know, depending on how much you're willing to spend, even at your own house, you can get a camera that can watch the street, and you can get a camera that can't even pick up who's standing at your front door. So it really is an investment that is important. and how it's structured and how you locate it are gonna be important.
One of the keys is going to be the other infrastructures there for the camera to be, for data to be transferred.
Right. And
So
that's,
I'm sure we can have a conversation outside of here and bring back some options.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously, the lowest cost option is a trail camera. It stores the data locally, so there's no infrastructure needed to transfer the data someplace else, real time, or to a recording device
and
someplace else.
it takes one or two shots and it's done.
But there are solar options out there that, are battery powered, so if there's something at night, but during the day, they have their own hard drive, their own data. There are options out there, and we can bring
Yeah.
something back. Something more commercial grade than something you bought at Cabela's.
Well, anything is better than what we have now.
Is there any further discussion?
Just one thing is that if we compost, we will not be composting big branches. We will be chipping the branches before we compost them. And composted branches decay faster than non-chipped branches, whether it's put into a compost site or into the current site. So that,
Chipping them or there's like tanks. You just dump everything in the tank and it kind of grinds it up in the tank. Probably be easier than chipping everything or more manpower use.
Right, okay.
And then you just tip it over and dump it out. Yeah, I mean, at some point in time, we're gonna have to figure out how we're gonna grind up those materials. But yeah, they're not gonna go in just as branches, they've gotta be ground up.
right.
And generally, in a big operation like this, they use those big tub grinders rather than chippers.
Okay, all right. That's all.
Anything else?
No?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us on to the CIP for 2019. Which, there was the memo that goes with that.
I was gonna tell you how many items you have.
Oh, yeah.
So you have the first item.
Do we need him for something here?
That's the first item, right?
Yeah, that's the first one.
In the CIP.
No. We were talking about something else earlier. Oh, we only grill them on something else.
We'll call him tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll call you in the morning. You ready?
I'm ready.
Ready?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to wait for Vicky?
Oh, yeah, we should wait for Vicky.
Good point.
If you guys want to review the pertinent ordinance on the yard waste site, it's Title 4, Section 9. So, then there's also a specific statement about it at like 4.3.15. So, those
Oh.
are the two pertinent sections.
How old is that ordinance?
The 4.9 is, it has to be real, let me see. I'm going back to it. 94 is when 4.9 was developed.
Okay.
So Title 4, Chapter 9.
Title 4, Chapter 9?
Yeah, and it's the entirety of that section.
That's on the city website, right?
Yeah, and so there is a residency requirement, and it's very straightforward in its designation of what's accepted, what's not.
Does it roughly coincide with what's posted? So like, the portion that matters more, I think, to Mark's point, in the left bin, residents may deposit modest amounts of broken concrete and or asphalt from home projects.
So it doesn't state in the ordinance what sections, but it
Okay.
is
It's-
consistent with what
Okay.
materials, yes.
Hot diggity.
Yeah, but
You asked about broken concrete. 492C, broken concrete materials, rocks and blacktop material not to exceed 1 cubic yard in aggregate may be transported by city residents and deposited in the designated area.
That's the key aspect of it. Everything is limited to city residents.
but
For concrete.
No, for the
For
entirety.
everything.
For everything.
Yeah.
Of the site.
So it would be nice if the signage was, people don't read ordinances. And so signage that point, either, and of course, only so much fits on a sign, so at least signage that pointed to a website would be better than what we have right now. I don't even, it doesn't say, anything, contractors, this current signage says nothing about contractors, for example.
Should we go-
I don't even know if it says city residents only.
Yeah, it does.
It does?
Yep.
Yep.
CIP?
Yeah, well, the main things on our capital improvement plan for next year are South Main Street, which I assume you all have a pretty good idea about.
Yeah.
And Mulberry Street, which is a project from Madison to Grant. Mulberry was the original one planned for this year. South Main was actually last year's project, which got delayed. I so look forward to doing both in the same year. We did, as a group, we took all the street maintenance, or a vast majority of the street maintenance, and moved it to this year. So you'll note that as a proposal, there's very little street maintenance for next year. But obviously there are two huge projects. We're still gonna do some sidewalks, curb and gutter patches. And as been clearly noted on Facebook, we contract all our patches. So you have to wait until the contractor's ready to come to town to actually fix the patch. So that we're at the mercy of the contractor as to when they actually come in. So water main repairs, the lead service laterals, any type of street repair that we're gonna do is going to be done as part of that maintenance program. And so the contractor might be in once, might be in twice, maybe even 3 times if we're lucky. But that's about it. So if you think the city's gonna run out and fix a patch every week, that's not occurring.
And the reason we do that is to lower our cost, right?
Well, we really don't have the equipment to do most of it.
Yeah.
And nor the staff to do a lot of that type of work. We did at one time, but we've cut back because there's too much other stuff going on. So we contract it because they come in, they bang out they've got the equipment to bang it out fast and hard. One of the biggest problems is delivering asphalt. You have to get that asphalt here at a certain temperature, under certain conditions, and they're more set up to do that than we are. Actually doing the patch, we have some of that equipment. We have a roller and a box, but getting the asphalt here at the temperature that's required to do a patch is just, especially with as far away as asphalt companies are now, it's not very easy. My memo goes over the street project. South Main is 1.25 miles long, and it is rebuilding everything: water, sewer, storm, curb, sidewalks, pavement, from the BP on Madison Street all the way down around the curve past County Highway A. Mulberry Street, it's not a state project, but it's under state bid. And so it will be bid out the same way that South Main Street is, by DOT. We do have more control over it. And sanitary sewer and water main are being done at the same time. I'm hoping that the South Main Street project comes in at a total of about $6 million for water and sewer. A little bit less. And that the roadway project will cost us somewhere around $2 million. 4? Okay. Yeah. And then, yeah, probably all 3 of them together, our costs are gonna be about $6.5 million. And I think we have $2.2 million in the general fund. A lot of that is the extra street lighting costs. We pay a little bit of the pavement, and Trying to remember else.
Is
There-
parking part of it?
No. Well, that's part of the pavement.
Oh,
We have to pay for the one lane that's pavement on the west side of the street. That's parking, designated parking. Um, I was really surprised how little we actually pay in conjunction with the actual street project. We pay a ton of engineering. We had to pay the state a lot of engineering. And then the streetlights and a couple of the other special projects that we had them do, like the crosswalks. We had 2 crosswalks put in, we pay all that. So, and then we had to pay for a pretty large portion of the electrical, the street lighting electric and things like that. And because we went through the special process of putting in the special streetlights, the city had to pay that, the utility did not. So,
is the state paying for the trees?
yes, they reimbursed us for the trees that we took down. So that was money that we got credit for. We still owed them $13,000 for when they did the culvert repair for the dam on the spillway. That's part of this project, so we owe them 13 on that, but we got a credit of $63,000 for the trees we'd taken down. We got a credit for East Lake Park Place, stormwater. And I think there was one other credit we got. We ended up with like $150,000 worth of credits. And then we got $125,000 towards the streetlights, so that brought it down to, I think, $450,000, because those streetlights are pretty expensive. But overall, I was surprised that it didn't cost us as much as I thought it was gonna. Mulberry Street isn't quite as extensive of a project. We're actually trying to stay pretty much within the we're staying within the existing right-of-way, but within the existing street. Yeah, it only gets a little bit wider. Does it have a bike trail?
No, the sidewalks are 5 feet.
Okay, so,
I think they're 4 in a lot, most places.
Do you want to join the big boy table?
You know,
No, other people can hear you.
the,
Sorry.
the project is substantially different than Main Street. It does have a historic district. So we opted to put the electric underground rather than overhead in that area. But we do come up and run overhead north of the historic district. We're moving the electric from the east side of the street, the southeast side of the street, to the northwest side of the street. The tree lawn will be narrow, at least on the southern section. Probably one of the major changes in the area is that would be stormwater. And anything else unusual? We're doing the water and the sewer again. And there's about $600,000 worth of water and sewer. Close to $1 million. And so that's pretty standard with a project, and we, again, both water and sewer in both projects are fully city funded. There's no grants there. They should take care of a lot of lead service laterals. So the project should, and they both take out water mains that are 120 years old. So,
So it might help with our leak rate.
yes, our water loss.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how much it can make a difference, right, Dwayne?
correct.
One leak could take out 40,000 gallons a week. Are there any other questions on that? capital improvement detail I gave you, some of it actually has a little bit of description and justification in it for all the utilities. Electric is really starting to drop off, but we've done a lot of electric work in the last 5 years. The only place that we may see some pretty significant electric investments that may come up is on the north side, north of the interstate. Otherwise, I think everything else is pretty up to speed. The detail has the 2 Mulberry Street, and after Mulberry Street, we're taking a holiday of 1 year. And that's to let water and sewer see if they can catch up. Because the last couple of years, they've accumulated a lot of debt with construction projects. So we're hoping that that'll give us a little bit of break and allow us to control our rates more with the demand. West Lake Street is selected. The pavement is as low, is it a 2?
So I believe it's a 3 in some areas.
Okay, a 3. But the water and sewer again is over 110 years old. That they tend to run together. It has a lot of lead services. So it was a good one to pick and repair. Are there any questions on that one at all, or do you have anything else you guys want to add?
It's currently, we have an application in for funding, same as what was done on Brewster through the MailSat program, through the state. I don't believe that Betsy's heard a response on that as of yet.
Yeah, that's the local program.
The local program.
It's about 20,000, 25.
So I have some questions about the street reconstructions and there's several factors, I think, that go into choosing which streets to reconstruct: water, sewer, street surface, of course. And then if something's a 3, it could be milled and overlaid. But if you have underground water, sewer issues, and you obviously don't want to do that, could you just go through, there's a bunch of streets to pick from. What was the rationale?
Sure. So I believe you're talking about.
The other document you provided.
Yeah. You provide more documentation, I ask more questions, you know that, right?
So what we did with the document, which is titled CIP Reconstruction Candidates,
Yeah.
as of this, we took every street that was still rated 3 or less, provided a list of those streets, then provided a length, provided some data with regard to, I'm getting some feedback, sorry, with regard to the street surface, at least some information on when we believe the street surface was constructed. We determined whether it was a dead end or not to try to provide some prioritization. We spoke with both the sewer and water departments, asked their opinions from their staff on maintenance. Sewer, where have they been clean? Where have they seen cleaning issues? Where have they seen root issues? Where are some of the problem areas that they have to maintain on a regular basis in order to keep things flowing and not backing up? So in those areas, we've noted yes or no. Same thing with water main breaks or other issues that they're seeing on the water side. Expanded on the water side a little more by providing some of the decade information. Stephen mentioned there's a number of streets that are 120 plus years old as far as the water main is concerned, and obviously Lake Street is one of those. So we've got a column showing the approximate decade of the water main. We also have a list that's running, if you recall, the DNR requirement to remove water mains from manholes. It was an option that was done years and years ago. So we still have some of those in the system that we're trying to replace. Note only a couple of the streets have that, or at least that are known. We then also provided a column with regard to lead services that are known to date through Brian's efforts with the city as far as observation. What we did not do is account for those that have been replaced since they've been reviewed and observed. Now, one could say, well, we could remove those, but what it does show is that there is a propensity of lead in those areas, and you are dealing with an older main. So we kept it as what was Brian observing, and so you'll see that number, especially on West Lake Street, we're looking at 15 that he observed in those blocks. The next column.
One of the things though there is that the DNR requirement is that you have to be testing a certain amount. You have to replace a certain amount of those services every year until you're down to a certain number. And the vast majority of the services are in that portion of the city. The only street that has more than Lake Fremont and College is Franklin. And these streets have, well, the pavement is about as bad there, but these streets, they carried more traffic, and they had some other issues that we had to deal with. Depth of water main, sanitary sewer manholes, that type of thing.
So what were the primary things affecting the decisions of, West Lake Street and the ones further out in the years? Was it, you start with probably the street surface and say the street needs to be, we need to do something with the street surface, and then you look at what's underground. Is the sewer and the water main condition the next most important thing, or is it the laterals at this point that's the next most important thing? Or
I would say the underground utilities as a whole will determine whether or not the option of potentially pulverizing and replacing, say in some of the 4s and even in the 3 occasionally, will consider potentially pulverizing. But once you get into that 2-3 area, you're really dealing with some of the base courses contaminated potentially. So there are candidates even in this list that we've been discussing as well that may be candidates for that. For example, Cherokee Path. While it is a dead end and it's lower on this list at this point, I guess I didn't comment on, we provided a comment section as well to try and provide some other parameters that might be useful in our decision-making, i.e., is it in a commercial area? Is it in a residential area? If it's in a residential area, is it serving more than single family? We also then looked at the dead-end streets. Are they serving less than 20 homes versus are they serving more than 20 condo or apartment complex? And so while this isn't a final, this is just an example of prioritization, and we have provided some prioritization of that list that you're seeing. That doesn't mean that this isn't a moving document, and we're really looking at that third. As you can see, we're talking about the streets that are in 21, 22, and 23. Again, next year we'll revisit this. Maybe one of these jumps above these
things can
streets.
change in the future.
Things can change. I think from the Lake Street side, we have applied for some funding, and so that one probably is a little more firm. The other kind of comments that you were asking, does Lake Street or West Lake Street provides somewhat of an alternate, although Main Street will be reconstructed, but it is somewhat of a thoroughfare to the Ferry Drive area and the northwest portion of the city. So having that street reconstructed does provide some of that access to that portion of the city, and then South and North Ferry Drive.
But West Lake Street crossed the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
I mean, you have bad water main, has bad sewer, has lead service laterals that need to be replaced. The pavement is in poor condition, the concrete is old. It covered the whole spectrum. So it was kind of an easy choice, and it carries more traffic than most of the other streets that we look at. College is the next one. Now, College is only from Ferry down to the lake. Same with Fremont, it's not the other ends.
When I saw this, I thought of something, and then you just reminded me. Do you just kind of do an informal, this is probably higher traffic than this one, or do we have any way of doing traffic
it's
counts in the city that,
We have some traffic counts that the state does in some general areas.
but the smaller the street, the less likely they're going to do it, right?
The residential streets, no.
Yeah.
And so it does come down to analysis of what is the area serving? Are they commercial areas? Are they dead ends? Are they single-family versus larger density areas? And it is a review of all of those types of aspects, and then
But it's
trying to.
also experience, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave and you and I see traffic out here all the time,
Right.
so, you know, West Lake Street's an access to Ferry, which goes to Bartles or up to a lot of people use it as a way to back into the middle school or to go to the Catholic Church.
Yep.
So it's, it's just those types of things that we have a general knowledge of the traffic patterns.
Okay.
But to a certain extent, it's all pretty much intuition. I mean, we're kind of saying, yeah, we know the water mains are old. I mean, we got that data, but we have a lot of old water mains.
Right, so you have to, just because it's old, if it's causing issues, that's, whether it's lead issues or breakage issues, that's what's probably
Yeah,
more important than the age, but it's
If you
good
want to
know
stop
that-
visiting the DNR, you're going to want to get all those lead services out of there.
Yeah.
And you know what that's like, Vicky. And so doing Westlake and College and Fremont has substantial benefit. And then Franklin would probably be the next one on the top of the list. It hits all the categories. And then from there, you know, Cherokee Path, that one's got relatively new water and sewer. Probably don't need to replace that. We could pulverize that, even though it's a 3, and come out of there and say, yeah, that'd probably last. The curb isn't that bad.
Right.
But it's not like it's not like comparing Lake Street. It's just not.
In fact, Steve mentioned the holiday, but then again in 2020, we will look to do maintenance program again. One of the issues that we are running into is that the utilities are extremely old. And so we are running into that question mark of, do we pulverize or mill and overlay some of these streets that are questionable on the utility side?
Right.
Or do we continue to let them degrade to get, the unfortunate part with that is you will have a larger list in this 2 to 3 range.
Which is an expensive thing to do, but if the utilities need work,
So there will be a balance in 2020 when we head back into the maintenance program again. That will be something we'll be looking at within the next year to try to find prioritization of that next round of maintenance program items.
We've cherry picked all the easy ones.
Yes.
We've already done. You know, we did Cass and Plainview and Brewster, and now we've done Grove and Woodland Beach Road, and those are borderline. If we do Cherokee Path, there aren't a lot of streets left that need maintenance that don't have water and sewer issues. Now, let's take North Main Street. We have a long-term pavement on a street. It's what, 20 years now? Probably got another 30 years of life left. It's got a water main that at the end of that would be almost 200 years old.
has it been breaking?
Well,
Okay.
it could be like Grove Street.
Yes.
It was broke and running like wild, and you had no clue.
So
The
how do we find it?
Some listening devices.
All right.
And staff was diligent in finding the leak. The leak was actually capped by a clay layer, which was forcing it into a stormwater pipe. That stormwater pipe, the outlet to that stormwater pipe was submerged at the creek. So, and it was in a high groundwater area as well.
Yeah.
So to notice that there was water leaking, it was normal to have water in a submerged storm sewer pipe. So with their diligence and continuing to look for leaks, and then using some technology that we're investigating, potentially purchasing, they were able to listen and actually pinpoint the location where they dug, and that's where it was. We're still evaluating the full effect of that find or that leak, but indications are good that it will definitely help in the overall water loss.
But let's go back.
Yeah.
We have done multiple studies where we've had people, actual contractors come in and use listening devices and not had any success. This one was being a little bit more diligent, having a little bit of an idea where there might be a problem. And the new technology, I mean, that's why he's talking about buying this as a brand new piece of technology. Used to be, we had nothing but maybe a stethoscope type of, nowadays they got electronic gear that really ramps it up.
So to head back to the spreadsheet that we were talking about, and to kind of put this in perspective, we're still looking at, even for the capital improvement plan, we're looking at a list here that's upwards of 20 to 30 streets of varying lengths. We're talking about a capital improvement plan that's taking one of these off the list at the current rate that we've been doing reconstruction. So even as we're looking at a 5-year capital improvement plan, we're only talking about the first 3 on this list. I just want everybody to realize that means the remainder of those streets are going to continue to degrade and become more of a maintenance, pothole maintenance expenditure. But again, it's a dynamic review that we do every year, and that's what the capital improvement plan is for, is to start placing priorities to those next 5 years of program dollars.
I would also maybe add that there's a little bit of a length component too, that, you know, these rows on the spreadsheet are a project or a street that has an issue, but, you know, for instance, Lake Street is 1,500 feet long, you know, many of these are 400 to 600 feet long, so, you know, you can maybe, for the same dollar value, get 3 off the list in a year, you know.
One of the other items though that we have is stormwater. That area on the west side there all dumps into the lake, or a large portion of them dumps into the lake. And we are trying to do something similar to what was proposed in the mill pond, which is have a storm scepter of some type, where we bring them all together and run them through a treatment system. And that'll take more construction on each one of them, right?
Correct. Any other questions on that spreadsheet?
I was just gonna give you a hard time, excuse me, I was gonna give you a hard time on replacing the 2001 snowplow when we still got the 93 snowplow out there. Just giving you a hard time.
Sometimes it depends on what it's been through. But, yeah, you're right. Probably that number just didn't get changed. To a certain extent, there was some stuff in here that got replaced in the vehicle category. I don't know if it already had been changed since maybe I published this. Did you check it, Dwayne?
The reason I was looking at it is I was trying to figure out how long we hold on to roving vehicles, make sure that we at least hold on to them more than a couple of years, but.
I think we have an 88. But
So we also still look professional too. Like, there's more steel than rust. Like, there's a
that's part of
balance.
it. That's part of it, but it also, you know, there's certain sets that are 1-ton trucks or 2-ton trucks. No, all the snowplows are 2 tons. But then we have the big ones, which are the quad axles. And then we have dump beds. So, like the dump beds, we put the racks on and we use to haul snow in the wintertime. Because all your snow plows, your dump trucks actually are loaded with salt and have all the gear on them, so you're not gonna use them to haul. So you gotta have haul trucks for snow in the wintertime, separate from your snow plows. And those trucks tend to be older. And then we have our quad axles, they tend to be a lot older.
But Paul has a replacement.
Yeah, it's in here.
Yeah, it's in there. They're all in there. I was just giving them a hard time that we're replacing
Yeah, it's,
a 2001 first this year and a 93 next year. And they're both
and
snowplows.
that could be part of the issue is that it might be one of those,
The basis of what I'm getting at though is we're not hanging on to it for more than 1 year. We still have older vehicles out there. We're not in complete disrepair. I was just trying to make a comment to say that, yes, we are actually looking at them all.
a lot better than historically. The fact that you see them and that there is actually some replacement going on is,
Yeah.
I think when I got here, the 1 year we bought used vehicles from Janesville, and they were 10 years old and they were still 10 years newer than the vehicles we were getting rid of. So you get a feel for,
And
I think we're actually up to the point now where we're replacing those with 2014, or 2016, 17, 18.
And my comment was based on, wasn't it about 2 years ago, Paul provided some information at this board level with regard to the replacement schedule? And I think some of this information, again, Paul would be able to speak to that better, but I think this information is coming from that. Potentially, we can talk with Paul when he returns and bring forth some more information on that from that last meeting. I believe it was at least 2 years ago.
And I have the spreadsheet that he used, because that's what I used to fill this out. He did update it this year. One of the items he provided, which this is old already. Because he's asked for that excavator instead of the truck.
So we have this proposed plan, right?
Yes,
We don't do anything with it this round, right? We're just talking about it now?
we're just talking about it.
What's the next step with this one then?
You guys look at it, see if you think it's reasonable, if there's anything else that needs to be added or changed. And then at the next meeting, we make a recommendation to the council.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on the CIP budget?
Nope.
That leads, to your point, into our next conversation of future agenda items. Other than the 2019 CIP budget, and probably a bit on composting. Maybe some data that's coming out if we're gonna be able to get the, survey out there, if we can get an initial. If it's
Yeah,
up there
you'll
or not.
also be getting the actual 2019 department budgets. So the utility budget and the street department budgets will be ready, and you'll have those for that meeting.
It'll be a busy meeting.
Could be a lot of data and
There's a lot of numbers there. Any other suggestions?
Anything else on the water?
yeah, we could else, you could have something on radium, you could have something on corrosion control. We might know our new NOV for lead service laterals. We could have a whole list of things. I don't know that they're gonna occur, but I know that we're doing the testing on the radium. That's being done right now. Well, we have a report that's ready to go. Same with corrosion. There's no way we're gonna have a report ready for the corrosion until January. Probably the same for the radium, right?
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Good. What about the update on that Justin's doing on the,
Water in.
no, not on the water rate, the
Corrosion study?
modeling?
The model should be done pretty soon.
We could talk about that. Probably the utilities for TID number 7. Those kinds of things. We could make it a nice long meeting. Stay at least until
This
11.
is laying here.
Yeah, that's mine, I left it accidentally.
Okay.
Okay.
I tried to grab somebody before he left. There are a lot of things going on that I can't keep track of all.
So if we're good for next month then at this point, I'll adjourn the meeting 1 minute earlier than last time. At 8:40.
We need a motion.
I don't.
To adjourn.